On this episode of AV Week, we talk about designing for supportability, Disney's new AR feedback system, and learning IT. All that and more. Next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 349, recorded Friday, May 4th, 2018. Into the Oasis.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Daylight, the leading producer of high-quality projection screens worldwide, and by Peerless AV, the official outdoor display provider of Daytona International Speedway.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to talk about the news and information that we have gathered for this week. First and foremost, he is a consultant, an AV pontificator, and a fine human being. His name is Josh Shrego, and he works for TCOM. How are you, sir?
It's humble, not honest. I don't care what anybody says.
I know. Also with us, the left-hand side of my brain, which has been missing for quite a while. So his name is George Tucker, and it was very, very, very nice to have him back. How are you, brother?
I'm all right.
And last but not least, the youngest version of our group. His name is Matt D. Scott. He is the host of our Resi show, Resi Week, and also an integrator out of London, Ontario. Welcome, sir.
Hey. How are you?
Just hey. I'm good.
Hey.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Sorry, I was cold. I didn't get my polar bear today.
Cold.
My polar bear was not here today.
I don't know if you caught that, London, Ontario, Canada. So, all right, first story up here comes to us from a way of commercial integrator. The 80,000 square foot Haas School of Business uses one unified system to control all of its education technology. We're going to start with Mr. Schrager on this, mainly because he designed it.
And that way none of us have to talk the rest of the show.
Well, there's that. It's Friday.
I can do that either way.
It's May the 4th. I'm just kind of feeling just kind of kick back today. No, seriousness, Josh. When you went into this, into this project, what was your main driving thought process of getting, honestly, a large pinnacle, jewel of a building for the Haas School of Business and UC Berkeley up and running?
The big thing was the ability to support.
Okay.
So we were taking the campus and expanding it significantly. The Haas School of Business hadn't had an update in probably about 20 years. And this building, this brand new building that came out of the ground, was their chance to really start to expand and start to bring in new technologies. And they wanted to push the envelope a little bit. They wanted to try new things, but that doesn't mean that necessarily they get new staff. That doesn't necessarily mean they get additional support people. So we have tiered classrooms, event spaces, multi-use spaces, flat flexible classrooms, flipped learning classrooms, and a lot of study spaces. And that's a lot of square footage for them to have to support with minimal staff. And so the big thing was making sure that everything was flexible, making sure that the systems would be automated, making sure that the systems could be easily accessed and easily supported by the people on site.
Matt, when it comes to projects like this, and Josh in the article, it talks about the importance of making sure that this can be used by several different users, right? So you have tenured faculty, but you also have adjuncts, which may or may not live in this space on a daily basis. When you start putting this stuff together and you start training folks, how important is it to make sure that the systems are easily understood and the interface, to be quite frank, is simple and intuitive?
Well, I think, to be honest, that is paramount, even above all the technology and all the capabilities of said technology. If your users and anyone who's worked in this space, this higher ed space, they know how, shall we say, frustrating some of these end users can be as far as understanding how systems work and putting any logical thought at times into the use of said system. If you can't design that interface and that functionality to be simple and easy for those end users to work it, they're just going to be a complete nightmare, and B, they will shun the system and honestly not use it. And no matter how great of a system you designed, it'll fail. What I loved here, and I'm blanking as I'm trying to find it right now, was the fact that you guys are using, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're using essentially like a swipe card. It was a swipe card or an RFID card?
We debated Bluetooth, we debated RFIDs, but we also had to expect that a professor would forget things. So they each are given a keypad. And
right.
They walk in and they key in their code, and whatever they have set their parameters for how any classroom should perform, as soon as they walk into that style of classroom, key in their code, the classroom adapts to how they like to teach.
Thank you. And to me, that was the key of this system. I love the Dante. I love everything else that Josh and the team there at Tico did, but that was key to me to use something like that, which I've seen before, but maybe not on this level. That was key because those professors, those adjunct professors can come in, do their thing, and as long as they've worked out what they want, they have the exact use that they're looking for. And hopefully that is going to cut down significantly on their tech support calls.
Yeah. Mr. Tucker, comes to this from an integrator standpoint and the support. I mentioned support because Josh said one of the main driving forces of this was being able to support it. Once the job is done, how do you exactly support a job of this size when it comes to making sure that, not just preventative maintenance is done, but training as well as, making sure that the systems are up and running and continue to be up and running? You're muted, George.
We'll start that again. I'm going to turn that to Josh in a minute but how do you do that? That is an excellent question. From a manufacturer or an installer side, of course, I don't think many of them have the architecture to do that. It really turns over to getting the in-house staff trained properly. And I guess I'll even ask Josh, they don't want you being the tech support for it. Really, they want to blame you in the end, but they really have an in-house set of people who they send everybody to, and then they go and yell at you.
Yeah, they do have their in-house staff, and we're talking about 4 or 5 people plus student assistants that aid in these efforts. But the way that we were able to do it was through monitoring. So, of course, using management software, your varying versions of it, Fusion, building management software. You have Overture from Barco. You have room management services from RMS from Harman. And so we have the flavor that they use on campus at Haas, which they had already had a license for, but no one was using it. So we had this full-blown license and one room that was existing on that license. So we repurposed that. So now we get error messages if a projector goes down. We get error messages if systems drop offline, because pretty much everything in this entire building is connected to the network or connected to a device that connects to the network. So we are able to get bidirectional communication from every single endpoint and monitor the status of all our devices in the system.
All right, so let me drill down on that real quickly, because when it comes to rolling that out, though, Josh, who then is responsible for that monitoring? Is it their in-house, or is it the integrator that put that in?
It depends on what it is. I mean, usually it's an in-house first, and then if it's something they can't solve or it's, a warranty repair, they then reach out to the integrator for those kinds of maintenance and those kinds of replacements, advanced replacement issues, things like that. But they do have the on-site staff to support quick things. So like one issue we ran into as we tried to close out this project was we ran into a network communication issue where a packet header was being stripped out, and it was causing the projector to crash. So it was getting a 0 packet header read, and the projector then would be non-responsive. So you had to physically go in and turn the projector on and off to get it to refresh. And doing so, but like, how do we know when the projector goes down? Because the thing is, the projector's still broadcasting an image. We just lose control over it.
Yeah.
So it became, we need to know when we lose that control. And so we started getting emails, and they would go to the user group for in our case, it was the integrator, myself, the programming house, and in-house staff. So that way we all knew what was happening, how frequently it was happening, was it particular rooms? Because we were trying to chase down the issue as to where this packet was being lost. And now they still have that capability, but we've resolved that issue. We got a new firmware for the projector and it solved that problem. But that doesn't mean that we're not maintaining, oh, hey, is the projector still online? So the first line of defense is always the in-house staff and then the integrator. And then at that point, it's relying on our manufacturing partners and then I step in anytime I can to still lend a hand.
All right. Very good. All right. Moving on to our next story from Innovate on the Net. This one's kind of fun. So let's kind of get through this. Disney is trying to enhance their virtual reality experiences. It is
How are they doing that?
It was with a haptic feedback delivery into a jacket. Now, the headline is Disney's vibrating jacket. Very difficult to say quickly without some snarkiness. But Disney is developing this new, basically interactive clothing line, right? Because if they make a jacket, they can make bracelets or other sorts of feedback. Matt, I want to start with you because what they're looking at is they're looking at VR and AR content, honestly. Mm-hmm. And this is something that lives in both the residential and the commercial area when it comes to making sure and making sure that the experiences are not just consistent, but also unique. We are 4 weeks away from Infocom, and Avixa has been beating the drum of experiences, exceptional experiences. How does this fit into creating the exceptional experience for our clients?
I don't know if it does yet.
Okay.
If you look at the imagery, if you read through their description of it, this is not something that I'm going to present to a CEO or a C-level executive to put on in most situations to then try and sell them on something. If it's something that we are looking at a first gen, which I believe we are, they've only had 16 people test this so far, but looking at this for what it will do down the road, I think it fits in because there comes an issue with VR and AR where you're only getting so much of the experience. And if you play a first person shooter, if you will, wearing a VR kit, it has some great feeling, but you're not running, you're not feeling anything. You're still just immersed into it. It's not what I would call true VR because it only affects 2 of your senses. As they continue to develop this out, they're going to have a lot of potential to hit more of your senses and create even more accurate representations of that virtual experience. How will it play out for us? I don't know. I don't know outside of the experience side of things how much this actually plays in the commercial AV space or even the residential AV space. From an experience point of view, I can see lots of uses for this.
All right, Mr. Tucker, I'm going to pick on you because good Lord, one of our first dozen episodes, we were talking about gesture controls, and Tucker has famously said, at least famously here, I am not a gesture. It seems an awful lot like you are. You're part of the experience, right? You're part of the control. You're part of the feedback mechanism when it comes to this. And the one thing that's interesting to me is if you have any sort of smartwatch, there are haptic feedbacks. Matt mentioned first-person shooters. If you're playing any sort of a video game today, whether you're playing a football game or you're playing a first-person shooter or you're playing something else, and something happens to your character, there's feedback there in the controller. This to me seems like just an extension of that, which would make you kind of part of the whole experience, no?
Yeah, I mean, it has potential, well, on a couple of levels. I'm going to take you on a side trip for a minute, but yes, in the video game, in an experience of, say, understanding an environment that you're going to be training for, those kind of haptic feedback systems, whether it's a jacket or a glove or any of those things, really does enhance that textual, that tactile acknowledgement of what's going on. So not just for video games, but training and things like that. I also see that as we see the rise of, say, exoskeletons and the stuff for the disabled. Well, within those technologies, there's a distancing from what you're actually using and experiencing. So if you're in an exoskeleton because you can't walk, knowing what's underneath you is very difficult. You can look at it, but there's no tactile feedback that we normally work with. And that the kind of technology could really enhance that. And we're now getting back into, say, that transhumanism, that man and machine together, where you can really understand what you're doing with the devices, not just lifting 100,000 or 1,000-pound box because you have this exoskeleton on, but understanding where it's going, how it's moving, and what it's feeling like, because that matters for military, for high explosive situations, for that kind of thing, dangerous situations. It has all kinds of outside technology that we probably could discuss at length on another show, but leads me to another question. Who owns that technology? It's Disney. Will they limit it? Sort of like Apple said, they're not going to let certain apps on their machines. So now we have a technology that can go various and sundry places. Some of them salacious, some of them practical.
Yeah,
Who's
Disney's
to stop
not going
that?
to get down with that.
But that's my question. How does that new technology, which could be revolutionize everything we do, from our the Star Trek holodeck,
yeah.
those kind of things? I know that's really far-fetched, but there is something there about what we're talking about. It's not just playing Battlefield 1 and feeling the bullet and going, he's over there. This expands. If you're going to do it for disabled or for people who have lost some kind of sensory tactile sense, a natural extension is to go elsewhere. Who controls that technology?
Yeah. Mr. Schrager, we'll end up with you on this. How do you design for this? How do you call this out in a spec?
By the Disney thing? I mean, I can only it's talk about the patent issues involved with this. That's the first thing I'm thinking about in terms of, okay, you're sole sourcing this product. How do you get that into a government spec? You talk about the government technology and the uses in military. Sole sourcing is never favorable in those environments because you have to have competitors and you have to have options. So what do you do when you don't have any options? But that's what you're really looking at. In terms of where does it go, though, I go back to what Matt said. This is the intro to the Oasis, and that's what we're looking for.
Very nice, very nice. By the way,
you're welcome.
If you don't know what the Oasis is, it's a reference to the Ready Player One movie/book.
You did those in the wrong order, but okay.
Absolutely, I did. Absolutely, I did. That's a whole. This is not the time nor the place to review a movie that was based on a book that was a fantastic book. So
yes, but that's what this is. This is the intro to that. Disney is looking for those immersive environments. There's very few companies in the world that do immersion of experiences the way that Disney does. That's their focus. They are storytellers and they are experience creators. And this gives them that next generation of that. So you think about Star Wars Land that's going to open up next year and what they're going to be able to do, giving people the experience of being a stormtrooper or being in those battles. This is entertainment at its finest in its next application. But at the same time, it's still preliminary. It's still early on. That's what you're designing around. You're designing around those immersive environments, because the two issues with AR and VR that we currently stand on is that there's no feedback response. This deals with that. And then the second one that we still have to deal with is the audio problem. The actual ability to record 360-degree audio and the ability to have that transplant you as you move around in the environments. And that's the next problem that still has to be solved to truly create those virtual and augmented reality spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Last story here comes to us from SCN and AV Network. SDVOE, the SDVOE Alliance, is launching a partner training and certification program. Real quickly, a side note, full disclosure, the SDVOE Alliance is an underwriter of AVNation. They have laid out and are rolling out a new training and certification program for designers and for consultants and for integrators. Josh, I'm actually going to start with you on this because you are the resident consultant here. Technologies like SDVOE and some of their competitors and compatriots, do programs like this make sense to get folks like you and get integrators not only interested, but also, knowledgeable about what all the different capabilities they have?
If you looked at what they were offering in the training course, there is value in it. Because it's fundamentals. What is an OSI model? What is IGNP? Like, how are they dealing with those things? And getting people to fully understand that capability to deploy these systems. I saw a conversation on LinkedIn just yesterday where it was somebody was talking about multiple control rooms, and they were building a 6th control room, but all the other 5 had been based on SDI, and all of a sudden it had to be network. It had to be a different experience for that. And it's like, wait, network isn't the solution for everything. Deploying everything on a network isn't necessarily the right thing to do. And hopefully these education courses will teach them that as well, that there's a time and a place when the scalability effort, when the expansion effort, when the future planning efforts, when all of these things have an effect that benefits the user. So it isn't just, I'm hoping that these training courses aren't just about understanding the vocabulary, being able to have the conversation with an IT manager and not sound like a fool. Because many times the AV industry is still too far behind. CTSD courses have started doing that. Avixa's got their training courses that support that. Each manufacturer has their independent product courses, and yay, SDVOE is now going to offer you their version of that. But if it doesn't get into the real fundamentals and then build on that to why is an IP solution a valid option in each use case, or when should you say this isn't the right solution, and being able to honestly approach that so that way it helps people rather than saying, oh, I've just learned about this thing, this is the thing that I need to be using, then it's not going to provide the real true benefit in the long run.
Yeah. George, I'm going to bring you on this because not for nothing, but George also writes for Residential Systems and has gathered a bunch of networking resources, honestly, over the last few months. Josh makes a really good point about having conversations with the CTOs and with the IT departments and not sounding like a fool. Do courses like this help that, or do they hinder that in putting you down a single path?
Well, as Josh said, if they're presented in the sense that they are basic information for that communication between IT and AV, or between the designers and integration, I think that there's a very valid reason for them. There's a number of transport protocols out there that do similar things and call their qualified people experts, even though it's a video training course. But I agree with Josh that if it doesn't get down deeper and really emphasize the fundamentals of that decision making, of how do you actually implement this thing, we're really creating something in those cases that's just good enough. It's that sort of good enough for rock and roll kind of idea, right? And that's not really what we need from that. It is a general interest, it is a draw, and hey, now learn more, here's where you go. But we have a problem in presenting this to people that this is the quick fix. And I always worry about that. You can learn how to program something. That's what I need. I go to YouTube to go, how do I use this Photoshop filter? Good. Okay, now I'm going to play with it. But it doesn't make me an expert in it. It just means I know now how to get there and do what I need to do. But that quick fix was not a training in it. And that's the thing I also worry about. It's just good enough. It always leaves me just a little uncomfortable.
All right, Mr. Scott, we'll end with you on this. Then what is it that we need to know when it comes to talking with the IT departments and the IT managers?
IT. Real IT. No,
Thank you.
Well, can we ask a question?
Matt said we need to know it.
Can we ask that question now? It has been 20 years since these things have been implementing IT or network connection.
Mm-hmm.
We're still struggling with this. And it's not just
because we don't take it
over it. It's the fundamentals of it.
It's because we don't deal with that key right there. We do not learn the fundamentals. Most AV integrators and most people that I know that are experts, quote unquote, in any sort of network-based transport for AV, they understand that side of AV, they understand that side of IT and networking, but they do not understand the fundamentals of networking and how a proper network functions and works. And I think that has been the part that, George really hit it on the head. They know enough about the product they're doing, but not enough about the actual fundamentals. And if you go back and you talk to everyone from, CEDIA trainers to Avixa trainers, the basics are the stuff that we always seem to lack expertise in. We know all these little specialized things, but too often we don't know the fundamental basics of how certain things work.
All right, very good. That'll be a good place to stop. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Mr. George Tucker, how do people find you?
I'm on Tucker2s on almost every single social media platform. I also write for various trades, and I blog occasionally.
Very good. Mr. Strego, thank you, sir.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. How do people find you if they are so inclined?
If you are so inclined, on Twitter, it's JSrago. That's SRAGO. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Lately, you can find me out and about. I've got an article on Type 3 and Type 4 PoE on sound and communications that just came out in the recent issues that has got some fun information about networks and the way things are going to change in the future now that HD-based can become a reality. And of course, you can always try and hunt me down in Infocom.
About 4 weeks out, we will absolutely do that. And Mr. Scott, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Can we put a tracker on Josh? It'll be easier to find him.
Yeah.
Paintball.
I would like to see the end user license agreement for this before I sign up for this.
I didn't say you were going to endorse it. I just said we were going to put a tracker on you.
I didn't say anything about endorsing. I have privacy and consent concerns with this.
I bet you do. If you want to connect with me, you can find me at Matt D. Scott on every pretty much social network thing. So, yeah. And as the host of AVWeek and covering Infocom for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of Infocom, you can go by the website and already watch some pre-interviews that we're doing with a number of folks. New one every single day. That at AVNation.tv. AVNation.tv. You will find Matt's program. You'll find this. You'll find a host of others. Also, while you're there, please check out our underwriter section. These are the folks who support us financially and help us bring you Infocom. Also, you can register for the AVNation Tweet Up. Happens June 6th, 4 to 6 p.m. in the beautiful Las Vegas Convention Center. Also, one other thing, we're doing a webinar May 17th with that man right there, Mr. Josh Strego, and also Jeremy Caldera and Eric Snyder from CTI, talking about AV over IP and all the different protocols, breaking them down, telling you what you need to know, and to Josh's point, there are going to be some instances where an AV over IP does not make sense. So we'll talk about that as well. So you can find all of that and more at avnation.tv, avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for AV Week.